bent double like old beggars under sacks. Knock-kneed, coughing like hags, we cursed through sludge, till on the hunting flares we turned our backs, and towards our distant rest began to trudge. Men marched asleep, many had lost their boots, but limped on, bloodshot. All went lame, all blind, drunk with fatigue, deaf even to the hoots of gas shells dropping softly behind. Gas! Gas! Quick, boys! An ecstasy of fumbling, fitting their clumsy helmets just in time. But someone still was yelling out and stumbling, and floundering like a man in fire or lime. Dim through the misty panes and thick green light, as under a green sea I saw him drowning. In all my dreams before my helpless sight, he plunges at me, guttering, choking, drowning. If in some smothering dreams you too could pace behind the wagon that we flung him in, and watch the white eyes writhing in his face, his hanging face like a devil sick of sin, if you could hear at every jolt the blood come gargling from the froth corrupted lungs, obscene as cancer, bitter as the cud of vile incurable sores on innocent tongues. My friend, you would not tell with such high zest to children ardent for some desperate glory the old lie, Dulce et decorum est, pro patria mori. Dulce et decorum est. The title of the poem, which seems to have been cut short, means it is sweet and fitting to. This shows that Wilfred Owen, the poet, intends to fill in the blanks about his feelings regarding the original line. The original line is Dulce et decorum est pro patria mori, meaning it is sweet and fitting to die for one's country. This was written by the Roman poet Horace. Given Owen's anti-war feelings, it seems as if he is hesitant to finish the entire title, believing that it will give the poem a pro-war setting. The beginning of the first stanza drags its readers into a war-torn setting. Owen makes use of understandable similes such as like old beggars and like hags, because he believes that civilians such as us cannot understand the true pain and horror that the soldiers suffer. When he compares the soldiers to hags or old women, he suggests that the soldiers have been aged beyond their years and show the symptoms of the elderly. He continues on by describing the journey the soldiers take back to their barracks. When he says distant rest, it possibly refers to the barracks where the rest of the soldiers are. However, it can also be interpreted as a reference to all of the soldiers who have died and that Owen is eventually going to end up like them. This also serves as a prediction of his own death because he eventually died in battle. He then says, "Men marched asleep." This is an oxymoron used to great effect. One cannot march while asleep, but this suggests that the soldiers were so fatigued that they were essentially walking asleep. Owen keeps referring to the gravity of the situation that the soldiers were in, which again keeps to the very powerful and vivid imagery. He says, "All went lame, all blind." This is anaphora of the word all. This suggests that all of the soldiers have lost their individuality. Not every soldier will be lame or blind in the situation. Owen then begins to describe a gas attack upon the men. He says, drunk with fatigue, deaf even to the hoots of gas shells dropping softly behind. This is a collective metaphor of the physical effect the war has had on the soldiers. Gas shells did not drop softly. He uses this oxymoron to further highlight the physical condition of the soldiers. This follows the very descriptive pattern of imagery. The second stanza is a very vivid description of the gas attack. The exclamations used unexpectedly drag the reader into a situation of frenzy and panic, much like the gas attack. When the soldiers are scrambling to fit their gas masks, he refers to the actions as ecstasy. This would seem a strange word to use in this situation. However, in medical terms, ecstasy refers to a state of mind that is solely occupied with one idea. Owen continues with a description of a man who has been caught in the attack without his gas mask. When describing the man, Owen switches from describing all the soldiers as one. He continues by using similes to describe the man as floundering like a man in fire or lime. This suggests Owen is hesitant to describe his actual appearance because he is frightened. Lime, in this case, refers to acid. He again uses similes to describe this soldier dying under the gas. He uses anaphora of the word green to depict the situation as if it is unfolding around the reader. There is also an increased use of commas within this section. In order for the reader to accept what is occurring, the pauses are required because there is so much destruction to process. The third stanza seems to have been abruptly broken off of the second stanza. The second stanza has 6 lines and the third stanza has 2 lines. This breaks off the rhyme scheme. The rhyme scheme is in fact continued from the last 2 lines of the second stanza to the third stanza. Owen has split the second and third stanza because the third stanza is reflection from Owen's point of view. The tense is also changed from past continuous to present continuous. This suggests that the author is in the moment. He describes the action of the dying man as guttering, choking, and drowning. In this case, guttering is a metaphor for a candle. A candle gutters when it runs out of oxygen to burn. This is very similar to the way the man succumbs due to the lack of oxygen. Owen is so fixated on this experience that he ends both the second and third stanza with the same word, drowning. The fourth stanza refers to the message of the poem and whom it is addressed to. In the first line, Owen says, "If in some smothering dreams you too could pace." This suggests that the readers cannot understand the reality of the war, even though Owen is narrating it. However, this is only assuming that the poem is addressed at the civilians. The word "you" could possibly be addressing Jessie Pope, who was a pro-war poet. Earlier versions of this poem were supposedly addressed to her. In the third and fourth lines of the stanza, Owen uses anaphora of the word face. It refers to the dying moments of the man who had been caught in the gas attack without his mask. The anaphora suggests that this man's face was what disturbed Owen the most. In the fourth line, Owen says, "like a devil's sick of sin." This is alliteration. The sound made when the line is pronounced is almost a hiss. Owen describes the devil by using an oral technique that forces the reader to hiss. In the fifth and sixth lines, Owen continues with his very vivid imagery. It again takes the sense that the reader cannot comprehend the reality of the war. In the seventh line, Owen describes the man's appearance to be like cancer and as bitter as the cud. The word cud is an allusion to another poem by Owen called Anthem for a Doomed Youth. The message is that these young soldiers are sent to die in war like expendable cattle, and their cud is the regurgitated physical appearance of these soldiers who are nearing their inevitable deaths. In the eighth line, Owen refers to these young soldiers as innocent tongues, and he refers to the inevitable deaths on the battlefield as the incurable sores. The innocent tongues also refer to the innocent youth who were attracted to the glorified view of war offered by Jessie Pope's poetry. The last 4 lines of this stanza are a direct message meant for Jessie Pope and any pro-war ideals. The paraphrase of this message in simple terms is, "If you understood the reality of war, you would not tell the youth who are desperate for glory to go to war." Owen refers back to his title with the last 2 lines. He completes the entire phrase here. However, with all of the presented evidence, he deems the phrase to be a lie. The majority of this poem follows iambic pentameter, which reflects the monotony of these soldiers' lives at war. However, throughout most of the poem, there are abrupt changes in meter. These changes reflect parts of Owen's message. For example, they refer to the swift gas attack these men faced in the narrative. These changes reflect the changing perspective of war during that time as well. There are also additions of feet in some lines, which reflect Owen's fixation with this topic. There are also reductions of feet, which result in silence whilst the poem is read. This premature silence reflects the premature deaths of these young soldiers.